The stars had always been silent. For 200 years, humanity reached into the darkness of space, built colonies on Mars and moons of Jupiter, and found nothing but empty rocks and frozen worlds. They began to believe they were alone. They were wrong. Admiral Park Taiho stood on the command deck of the orbital station Unity when the alarms began. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes that had seen too many battles. The Mars Rebellion, the Europa Crisis, the Titan Incident. He had faced death many times, and death had always blinked first. "Sir, we have unknown contacts near Jupiter," a young officer said, her voice shaking. "Hundreds of them. No, thousands." Park Taiho walked slowly to the main screen. The image showed a tear in space itself, a wound of purple light against the black. Ships poured through it like water from a broken dam. They were massive, ugly things covered in spikes and weapons. The largest one was bigger than anything humanity had ever built. It moved like a predator entering new hunting grounds. "Contact Earth Command," Park Taiho said quietly. "Tell them we have visitors." Within hours, every screen on Earth flickered. Every phone, every tablet, every billboard. A face appeared that was not human. The creature had gray skin stretched tight over a skull-like face. Its eyes were black pools with no warmth. When it spoke, the translators turned its growling voice into words that every human could understand. "I am Warlord Vorn of the Kellan Dominion. Your world now belongs to us." The creature paused, letting the words sink into the hearts of 8 billion people. "We have conquered 47 worlds. We have ended civilizations that existed before your species learned to walk upright. You have 7 of your planet's rotations to surrender completely. Your leaders will kneel before me. Your people will serve us. Your resources will feed our empire." Vorn leaned closer to the screen, and his thin lips pulled back to show rows of sharp teeth. "If you refuse, we will burn your cities to ash. We will poison your oceans. We will hunt your children through the ruins of your world until not one human remains alive. This is not a threat. This is a promise. You have seen our fleet. You know you cannot win. Surrender, and some of you may live. Resist, and all of you will die." The screen went black dot in Seoul. Dr. Yoon Hana watched the broadcast from her office at the Institute of Xenological Studies. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a mind that never stopped working. While others screamed or cried or stood frozen in shock, she rewound the recording and watched it again. Then again. Then a 4th time. Something was wrong. Not with the threat itself, but with the way Vorn delivered it. She had spent her life studying communication, language, the small signs that revealed what beings truly felt beneath their words. And she saw something in Vorn's black eyes that surprised her. She saw Dot in Beijing. General Kim Do-hyun received the news while eating breakfast with his granddaughter. He set down his chopsticks, kissed the girl on the forehead, and walked to his car without a word. By the time he reached Central Command, his mind had already calculated the odds of survival. They were not good. But Kim Do-hyun had never cared much for odds. "Get me everything we know about their ships," he ordered. "Weapons, shields, weaknesses. I want options on my desk in 6 hours." "Sir, there may not be any weaknesses," an aide said nervously. "There are always weaknesses," Kim Do-hyun replied. "The question is whether we are smart enough to find them." The United Earth Council met that night in an underground bunker beneath Geneva. Presidents, prime ministers, and generals gathered around a table while the fate of humanity hung in the air like smoke. Some argued for surrender. "Better to live as slaves than die as free people," they said. Others called for immediate attack, a desperate strike before the enemy could prepare. Admiral Park Taiho listened to them argue for 3 hours. He stood by the wall, arms crossed, face unreadable. Finally, the council president turned to him. Admiral, you command our defense fleet. You have seen their ships. What do you recommend? Park Tae-ho walked slowly to the center of the room. Every eye followed him. The room fell silent. I watched the Warlord's message very carefully, he said, and I noticed something interesting. He gave us 7 days. 7 days to prepare our surrender, someone muttered. No, Park Tae-ho shook his head. 7 days to prepare our response. Think about it. If the Kellen were truly confident in their power, why warn us at all? Why not simply attack? They have the ships. They have the weapons. They could have destroyed our orbital stations before we knew they existed. He let the question hang in the air. They gave us 7 days because they want us to be afraid. They want us to break before the fighting even starts. They have conquered 47 worlds with fear, not weapons. Their victims surrendered because they believed resistance was impossible. Dr. Yoon Hana, watching through a video link, nodded slowly. She understood now what she had seen in Vorn's eyes. It was not the doubt of a weak creature. It was the caution of a predator facing prey it did not fully understand. The Kellen have studied us, Park Tae-ho continued. They have watched our history, our wars, our genocides, our ability to destroy ourselves and rebuild from the ashes. And somewhere in their calculations, something does not add up. We are not like their other victims. We do not break easily. We do not surrender quietly. He looked around the room at the frightened faces of Earth's leaders. So here is my recommendation. We do not surrender. We do not beg. We show them exactly what kind of species they have threatened. The council president stared at him. And if we lose? Then we lose fighting. Park Tae-ho's voice was hard as iron. Humanity has faced extinction before. Ice ages, plagues, wars that killed millions. We are still here. We will still be here when the Kellen are dust and memory. He turned to leave, and someone called out to him. Admiral, when you first saw their fleet, you smiled. Why? Park Tae-ho stopped at the door. He looked back over his shoulder, and the ghost of that smile returned to his weathered face. Because they made a mistake. They thought we would be afraid. They thought we would crumble like the others. But they do not know us. They do not know what we have survived. They do not know what we are capable of when our backs are against the wall. He opened the door. They are about to learn. The door closed behind him, and the council sat in silence. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant, and somewhere among them, an alien warlord waited for humanity to kneel. He would wait forever. The second day after Vorn's message, something strange happened across Earth. The panic began to fade. People stopped running. They stopped crying. Instead, they started getting angry. Dr. Yoon Hana noticed it first in the data. Social media posts shifted from despair to defiance. Old war songs from 100 nations started trending. Recruitment centers that had been empty for decades suddenly had lines stretching around the block. Fathers who had never held a weapon asked where they could learn to shoot. Grandmothers offered their homes as shelters. Children drew pictures of human soldiers standing tall against alien monsters. Humanity was not breaking. Humanity was waking up. In her office, Hana compiled her report for the council. She had studied the Kellen for 48 hours straight, pulling information from their broadcast, their ship designs, even the way Vorn moved and spoke. What she found was fascinating. The Kellen have conquered 47 worlds, she told the council through the video screen. But they have never truly fought a war. Not the way we understand war. General Kim Do-yeon frowned. Explain. Every species they encountered either surrendered immediately or fell apart from internal conflict. The Kellen use fear as their primary weapon. They arrive with overwhelming force, issue threats, and wait for their victims to destroy themselves through panic and division. Hana pulled up images of alien worlds now under Kellen control. Look at these civilizations. They were peaceful. They had no history of large-scale conflict. When faced with extinction, they had no idea how to respond. She changed the display to show human history. Battles, revolutions, cities burning and being rebuilt. Soldiers charging into certain death with smiles on their faces. We are different. We have been fighting each other since we came down from the trees. War is not strange to us. It is part of who we are. The Kellen have never faced a species that considers violence a normal part of existence. Admiral Pak Tayo nodded slowly. They studied our history. They should have known this. They did know, Hana replied. That is what concerns them. I believe the Kellen expected their threat to divide us. They expected nations to turn against each other, to fight over resources, to collapse into chaos. Instead, we unified faster than at any point in human history. Every nation on Earth has pledged its forces to the defense effort. Old enemies are standing side by side. This was not in their calculations. On the other side of the solar system, Warlord Vorm received similar reports from his advisors. He sat on his command throne aboard the dreadnought Eternal Conquest, staring at data that made no sense. The humans are not fleeing, Commander Wren reported nervously. They are not fighting each other. They are preparing. Preparing for what? Vorn's voice was a low growl. They cannot defeat us. Their ships are primitive. Their weapons are toys. Yes, Warlord. But they do not seem to understand this. Wren pulled up footage from Earth. Factories working through the night. Soldiers training in every open field. Scientists working without sleep. They are building more weapons. More ships. More defenses. It is as if they believe they have a chance. Vorn watched the images in silence. In his long life, he had never seen anything like this. The other species had always reacted correctly to his threats. They wept, they begged. They turned on each other. The strong tried to save themselves by sacrificing the weak, but humans were protecting their weak. They were sending their young to safety and pushing their elderly to the front of food lines. They were sharing resources freely across borders that had divided them for centuries. They were behaving as if the survival of their species mattered more than their individual lives. It was disturbing. There is something else, Warlord. Wren hesitated before continuing. We intercepted communications from one of their pilots. A young female named Choi Minji. She has volunteered to lead a reconnaissance mission against our fleet. A single pilot? Against our fleet? Vorn almost laughed. She will die. Yes, she knows this. They all know this. Wren's voice dropped. And they volunteer anyway. There is a list of 10,000 humans waiting to take her place if she fails. Vorn said nothing. He thought of the 47 worlds he had conquered, the billions of beings now serving his empire. None of them had ever volunteered to die. They had surrendered to avoid death. That was natural. That was natural. That was logical. These humans were not logical. Back on Earth, Lieutenant Choi Minji prepared her fighter for launch. She was 26 years old, with short black hair and eyes that burned with quiet fire. Her commander had told her the mission was suicide. She had simply nodded and asked when she could leave. You do not have to do this, Admiral Pak Tayo said, standing beside her ship in the launch bay. We can send drones. Drones cannot adapt. Drones cannot think. Minji checked their weapon systems one more time. You need someone who can look at their ships and understand what they are seeing. You need a human. You might not come back. Minji looked at him with a small smile. My grandmother survived the soul fire when she was 8 years old. She walked through burning streets carrying her baby brother. My grandfather lost his legs in an accident and still worked in the fields every day until he was 80. My mother raised 4 children alone after my father died. She climbed into her cockpit. I come from people who do not know how to give up. Why would I be any different? She launched into the darkness, a single small ship flying toward a fleet that could destroy worlds. Deep beneath the mountains of Switzerland, Dr. Lee Sunwoo worked on something that might save humanity. He was a thin man with messy hair and circles under his eyes. He had not slept in 3 days. On his screen was a design for a weapon the Kellen would never expect. Their ships use a central coordination system, he explained to Intelligence Officer Beak. June. Every vessel is connected to the flagship. If we can disrupt that connection, their fleet becomes a collection of blind, confused ships rather than a unified force. June studied the plans. Can you build it in time? If I do not sleep for the next 5 days, maybe. Sunwoo rubbed his tired eyes. The real question is whether we can get close enough to use it. The disruption field has a limited range. Leave that problem to the military. June placed a hand on his shoulder. You focus on giving us a chance. That is all we need. One chance. On day 3, Vaughn received a report that made him summon his full war council. A single human fighter had penetrated their outer defense line, scanned multiple ships, and escaped before they could destroy it. The pilot had flown through fields of weapons fire, dodged pursuit vessels, and transmitted valuable data back to Earth. The pilot was still alive. This is impossible, one of his admirals said. No pilot has ever survived against our interceptors. Apparently, human pilots are different, Vaughn replied coldly. He stared at the tactical display, at the small dot that represented Choi Minji's ship limping back to Earth. Something cold settled in his stomach. It was not fear. Kellen warlords did not feel fear, but it was close. We will not wait for their deadline, he announced suddenly. We attack in 2 days. Let us see how brave these humans are when their cities burn. His admirals nodded eagerly. They would show these primitive creatures the true power of the Kellen Dominion. They had no idea what was coming. On the 4th day, Earth sent its response to Warlord Vaughn. It was not a surrender. It was not a plea for mercy. It was something the Kellen had never received from any species in their history of conquest. It was a challenge. The broadcast began with darkness. Then, slowly, images appeared. Fire, smoke, destruction. A city burning to the ground while people fled through the streets. For a moment, the Kellen watching believed they were seeing a vision of Earth's future, a preview of what their attack would bring. Then the words appeared on screen. London, 1666. The images changed. A different city, a different time. Bodies in the streets. People wearing strange masks. Death everywhere. Europe, 1347. The Black Death. 1/3 of all humans died. More images. Soldiers charging across muddy fields into walls of gunfire. Explosions tearing men apart. World War I. 20 million dead. Mushroom clouds rising over cities. Shadows burned into concrete walls. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, 1945. Forests burning. Ice caps melting. Storms destroying coastlines. Climate crisis. 21st century. Each image was worse than the last. Each showed humanity facing destruction on a scale the Kellen had never imagined. Disease, war, natural disaster. Self-inflicted wounds that should have ended their species 10 times over. And then the tone changed. Cities rebuilt from ashes. Hospitals full of survivors. Soldiers returning home to their families. Children playing in the ruins of what had been battlefields. Gardens growing where bombs had fallen. Life returning, always returning, no matter how many times it was beaten down. The images ended and a face appeared. Admiral Park Taiho looked directly into the camera, his eyes steady and calm. "We have received your message, Warlord Vorn. You threaten us with extinction. You tell us to surrender or die. You believe we have never faced such danger before." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "You are wrong. We have faced extinction many times. We have killed each other with weapons that could destroy planets. We have poisoned our own air and water. We have watched plagues sweep across continents and leave mountains of corpses behind. Every generation has believed they would be the last." Park Tae-ho leaned closer to the camera. "And we are still here. We are still here because humans do not know how to give up. It is not in our nature. You have conquered species that lived in peace, that had no memory of war, that had never known true suffering. We are not like them. We were forged in fire. We were built by struggle. Every time the universe tried to kill us, we survived, and we grew stronger." His voice hardened. "So here is our response to your threat. We will not surrender. We will not kneel. You are welcome to try to destroy us. Others have tried before. We have their bones in our museums." The broadcast ended. Aboard the Eternal Conquest, Warlord Vorn sat in silence for a long time after the transmission ended. His advisors waited nervously, unsure how to read his expression. "They are insane," one admiral finally said. "They actually believe they can win." "No," Vorn replied slowly. "They do not believe they can win. They simply do not care. That is worse." He had studied the images in their broadcast carefully. The death counts, the destruction, numbers that would have ended any other civilization. And yet humans had kept breeding, kept building, kept fighting. They treated extinction as an inconvenience rather than a possibility. Commander Ren stepped forward nervously. "Warlord, perhaps we should reconsider our approach. If we offer them better terms, a partnership instead of subjugation, they might." Vorn moved so fast that Ren barely saw the blade. One moment he was speaking. The next, he was on the floor, his life bleeding out onto the cold metal. "I do not negotiate with prey," Vorn announced to his remaining advisors. "We attack tomorrow. We will show these humans what true power looks like. Their defiance means nothing against our weapons." But even as he spoke the words, a small part of him wondered if he was making a mistake. On Earth, General Kim Do-hyun unveiled humanity's secret. For 50 years, ever since the first signals were detected from deep space, Earth's governments had been preparing for this day. Hidden bases, secret weapons, defense networks buried so deep that no scanner could find them. "We call it Project Fortress," Kim Do-hyun explained to the council. "Orbital platforms armed with weapons that can cut through any known armor. Ground-based artillery capable of hitting ships in orbit. Bunkers that can survive direct nuclear strikes. And soldiers. Millions of soldiers trained for exactly this scenario." Dr. Yoon Hana studied the data with growing amazement. "You kept this secret for 50 years. How?" "Because we knew this day would come eventually. We did not know who would arrive or when or why. But we knew someone would come. And we wanted to be ready." Kim Do-hyun's face was hard. "Now we find out if our preparations were enough." Lieutenant Choi Min-ji had survived her reconnaissance mission, though her ship was barely holding together when she landed. The data she brought back was worth her near-death experience. The Kellen fleet had a weakness. Their ships operate on a hive system, she explained to the command staff, her arm in a sling from a wound she had received. Every vessel is connected to the flagship. The flagship sends commands, and the other ships follow without thinking. If we can take out that connection, their coordination falls apart. Dr. Lee Sun-woo nodded eagerly. "That is exactly what my disruption field is designed to do. Once activated, it will create interference across their entire communications network. Their ships will not be able to receive orders from Vorn. How long will the disruption last? Admiral Park Tai-ho asked. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe less. Sun Wu shrugged. It depends on how quickly they adapt. But 10 minutes of chaos could be enough. Enough for what? Park Tai-ho's smile returned. Enough to kill their warlord. Intelligence officer Baek Jun had been digging through intercepted Kellen communications for days. What she found confirmed Dr. Yoon Hana's theory. The Kellen had been watching Earth for decades. They had seen humanity's wars, their weapons, their endless capacity for violence. And they had been afraid. They almost did not come, June reported. There were debates in their high command for years. Some wanted to destroy Earth from a distance without ever making contact. Others wanted to avoid us entirely. What changed their minds? Hannah asked. Greed. Earth has resources they want. Water, minerals, genetic material. June's face was grim. They decided the risk was worth the reward. They believed their psychological tactics would work on us like they worked on everyone else. They were wrong. Yes, and now they are committed. Vorn cannot retreat without losing face. He will throw everything at us, even if it means the destruction of his entire fleet. June paused. He would rather die than admit he made a mistake. On the morning of Day 5, the Kellen fleet began to move. Thousands of ships surged toward Earth, their weapons charging, their crews eager for the slaughter to come. Vorn watched from his throne, imagining the cities burning, the humans screaming. The sweet taste of total victory. He imagined their arrogance dying with them. But as the fleet approached Earth's defensive perimeter, something unexpected happened. The human ships did not flee. They did not scatter in panic. They formed a line, a thin wall of metal and fire between the Kellen and their home dot, and they advanced. Admiral Park Tai-ho's voice crackled across every human ship. Calm and clear. All units, this is the Admiral. The enemy has come to destroy our world, our families, our future. They believe we will break. They believe we will run. They are wrong. He paused. Today, we show them what it means to threaten humanity. Today, we make them regret ever learning our name. All units, attack. The human fleet surged forward, weapons blazing, flying straight into the heart of the alien armada. They were outgunned. They were outnumbered. And they were smiling. The battle for Earth had begun. Space burned with the light of 1,000 weapons. Human ships crashed against the Kellen fleet like waves against rocks. And for the first terrible minutes, it seemed the rocks would win. Kellen cruisers cut through Earth's defenders with contemptuous ease. Human fighters exploded into clouds of debris. The darkness filled with the screams of dying pilots and the cold laughter of alien gunners. But the humans did not stop coming. Admiral Park Tai-ho stood on the bridge of the carrier Defiance, watching the battle unfold on dozens of screens. Every lost ship was a knife in his heart. These were his people, his soldiers, his responsibility. And they were dying by the hundreds. Admiral, we have lost 30% of our forward fleet, his tactical officer reported, voice tight with fear. The Kellen cruisers are breaking through our line. Let them through, Park Tai-ho said calmly. Sir? Let them through. Pull our ships back to defensive positions around the orbital platforms. Let the Kellen think they are winning. It was a gamble. Everything depended on what happened in the next few minutes. Lieutenant Choi Minji led what remained of her squadron toward the Kellen flagship. Her ship was patched together with emergency repairs, held together more by hope than engineering. She had 12 pilots with her. Only 3 would survive the next hour. Target the shield generators, she ordered. We need to create an opening for the disruption field. Minji, there are 50 interceptors between us and those generators, her wingman said. Then we go through 50 interceptors. She pushed her throttle forward, and her squadron followed. They dove into a storm of weapons fire, weaving through beams of energy that could vaporize them in an instant. Ships exploded on either side of her. Friends she had trained with, eaten with, laughed with. Gone in flashes of light. She did not slow down. On Earth, General Kim Do-yoon watched the invasion forces descending through the atmosphere. Kellen dropships fell like burning meteors, heading for every major city on the planet. They expected terrified civilians. They expected empty streets and white flags. They found Seoul waiting for them. Kim Do-yoon had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. Every building was a fortress. Every street was a trap. Every citizen who could hold a weapon had been armed and trained. The Kellen ground troops marched confidently out of their ships, and the city exploded around them. Rockets screamed from windows. Mines erupted beneath their feet. Snipers fired from rooftops that had seemed abandoned. The Kellen soldiers, used to conquering worlds with mere displays of force, suddenly found themselves in a meat grinder. Push them back to their landing zones, Kim Do-yoon commanded. Do not let them establish positions. Hit them hard and keep hitting them. An aide rushed up to him. General, they are landing forces in Beijing, Mumbai, New York, and Lagos. Good. Let them spread themselves thin. Kim Do-yoon's smile was cold. Every city is ready. Every city is a trap. In orbit, Choi Min-ji reached the flagship shield generators. Her squadron had been reduced to 4 ships. She watched her targeting computer lock onto the massive structures that protected Vorn's vessel. All ships fire everything. Leave nothing in reserve. Missiles and plasma bolts streaked toward the generators. The shields flared, absorbed the attack, held firm. But cracks appeared in the energy field. Small weaknesses that a careful observer might notice. Choi Min-ji was a careful observer. Again, same spot. Poured on. Her ships fired until their weapons overheated. The shields flickered, sparked, and finally collapsed in a cascade of failing energy. For a few precious seconds, the flagship was exposed. Dr. Lee, this is Min-ji. The shields are down. Now or never. Across the solar system, in a hidden base on the moon, Dr. Lee Sun-woo activated his weapon. The disruption field erupted from the base in an invisible wave, spreading across the battle at the speed of light. When it hit the Kellen fleet, chaos followed. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly stopped. Others continued on their previous courses, crashing into their allies. Weapons that had been firing with deadly precision went silent as their targeting systems failed. The hive mind that connected every Kellen vessel to Vorn's flagship shattered into a million confused pieces. It worked, Sun-woo whispered, staring at his screens in disbelief. It actually worked. Admiral Park, Taiho saw the confusion spread through the enemy fleet and knew this was their only chance. All ships, attack. Break their formation. Do not give them time to recover. The human fleet, battered and bleeding but unbroken, surged forward. They tore into the disoriented Kellen ships with the fury of a species fighting for its survival. Cruisers that had seemed invincible moments ago became easy targets. Fighters that had hunted humans now fled in confusion. On the ground, the Kellen invasion forces found themselves cut off from orbital support. Their commanders received no orders. Their reinforcements did not arrive. And the humans kept coming, wave after wave, fighting with weapons and fists and bare teeth when nothing else remained. In Lagos, civilians armed with hunting rifles held off Kellen soldiers twice their size. In Mumbai, factory workers used industrial equipment to crush alien armor. In New York, subway tunnels became killing grounds where the invaders' superior technology meant nothing against humans who knew every inch of their city. Dr. Yoon Hana had been given a special assignment. While the soldiers fought with weapons, she fought with words. Using every broadcasting system still functioning, She flooded Kellan communications with humanity's war cries. Every culture, every language, every nation. Songs of defiance. Chants of fury. The sounds of a species that refused to die. Let them hear us, she said to her team. Let them know what they awakened. The Kellan soldiers began to break. Not from superior firepower, but from something they had never encountered before. Fear. True fear. Of an enemy that would not stop, would not surrender, would not accept defeat no matter how obvious it seemed. On the flagship, Warlord Vorn felt his empire crumbling. His screen showed disaster everywhere. Ships destroyed. Ground forces routed. The perfect coordination of his fleet reduced to chaos by a single human weapon. Get me communications with the fleet, he demanded. Restore the connection. We cannot, Warlord. The interference is too strong. Then destroy the source. We cannot locate it. The humans hid it too well. Vorn slammed his fist against his throne. This was impossible. These primitives, these short-lived creatures with their fragile bodies and their ridiculous hope, were not supposed to fight like this. They were supposed to break. They were supposed to surrender. An alarm blared through the bridge. Human ships had breached the outer hull. Soldiers were aboard. Repel the boarders, Vorn commanded, rising from his throne and drawing his blade. I will deal with them myself. Sergeant Han Ji-ho led the boarding party through the corridors of the alien flagship. He was a big man with scarred hands and eyes that had seen too much death to fear it anymore. Behind him came 50 Marines, the best humanity had to offer. Find their warlord, Ji-ho ordered. Cut the head off the snake. They moved through the ship like a virus, killing everything in their path. Kellan soldiers fell before them, unprepared for enemies who fought at close range, who did not care about casualties, who smiled as they died as long as they took their killers with them. Ji-ho found Vorn in the command center, surrounded by his personal guard. The warlord was taller than any human, his armor thick, his blade already wet with human blood. You dare face me? Vorn's voice was a growl of contempt. I have killed thousands. Ji-ho raised his rifle. Then a few more will not matter. The battle was short and brutal. Vorn's guards fell quickly, but the warlord himself was another matter. He moved faster than seemed possible, his blade cutting through 3 Marines before Ji-ho could reach him. When they finally clashed, Ji-ho knew he was outmatched. Vorn was stronger, faster, better trained. His blade sliced through Ji-ho's armor, cutting deep into his shoulder, his leg, his chest. Blood poured from wounds that would kill any normal human in minutes. But Ji-ho did not stop. He kept swinging, kept fighting, kept coming even as his body failed him. Vorn fell back, confusion in his alien eyes. Why do you not stop? You are dying. Ji-ho laughed, blood on his lips. Humans do not stop. Did no one tell you? We do not stop. He lunged forward one last time, and his blade found its mark. The warlord of the Kellan Dominion fell, and across the battlefield. When news of his death spread, the Kellan fleet began to surrender. Humanity had won. The guns fell silent over Earth. In orbit, the burning wreckage of Kellan ships drifted like fallen leaves. On the ground, alien soldiers dropped their weapons and raised their hands in surrender. The invasion that was supposed to take 7 days had ended in 5, and it had not ended the way Warlord Vorn had imagined. Sergeant Han Ji-ho survived, though the doctors said it was a miracle. He spent 3 months in a hospital bed, his body held together by metal and medicine and pure stubbornness. When they asked him how he kept fighting with wounds that should have killed him, he just shrugged. I was angry, he said simply. Too angry to die. Lieutenant Choi Min-ji became the youngest admiral in Earth's history. She accepted the promotion with the same calm she had shown flying into certain death. When reporters asked if she had been afraid during the battle, She thought about it for a long moment. No, she finally said. I was too busy to be afraid. There was too much to do. Dr. Lee Sun-woo returned to his research, already working on the next generation of defense systems. The Kellen were defeated, but the galaxy was vast, and other threats would surely come. He had given humanity 10 minutes of hope. He wanted to give them centuries of safety. Intelligence Officer Beat Jun began the long work of understanding Kellen society. There were other worlds out there, 47 of them still under Kellen control. Their people had seen Earth's victory. They had seen that the Dominion could be beaten. Seeds of rebellion were already spreading. General Kim Do-hyun walked through the ruins of Seoul on the day the last Kellen soldier surrendered. The city was badly damaged. Buildings had collapsed. Streets were scarred by weapons fire. But already, crews were cleaning the debris. Architects were drawing plans for reconstruction. Life was returning. A young girl ran up to him and handed him a flower she had picked from a crack in the concrete. Thank you for saving us, she said. Kim Do-hyun knelt down to accept the gift. His eyes were wet, though he would never admit it. We saved each other, he told her. That is what humans do. Dr. Yoon Hana was given a new mission. The Kellen surrender meant contact with alien civilizations for the first time in human history. Someone needed to speak for Earth. Someone needed to explain who humans were and what they wanted. She started with the truth. We are not conquerors, she told the representatives of other Kellen-controlled worlds through the communication systems they had captured. We do not want your worlds or your resources. We want to be left alone. But if anyone threatens us again, if anyone tries to destroy us, they will learn what the Kellen learned. We do not surrender. We do not give up. We fight until we win or until there is no one left to fight. It was not a diplomatic message. It was a warning. And across the galaxy, other species listened and understood. Humanity was not to be touched. The prison where they kept Vorn was a simple place. No torture. No cruelty. Just a small cell with a bed and a window that looked out on a park where children played. It was, in many ways, more merciful than anything he had shown his own prisoners. He did not understand mercy. It confused him more than the battle had. A guard named Yunari came to bring his meal one evening. She was a small woman with a kind face and no obvious hatred in her eyes. She set the tray down and turned to leave. Wait, Vorn said. His voice was quiet, broken by defeat. I must ask you something. Nari paused at the door. What? How? He struggled for words, his alien mind trying to grasp something that seemed impossible. How did you do it? My fleet was stronger. My weapons were superior. I have conquered species with technology far beyond yours. How did you win? Nari thought about the question. She was not a soldier or a scientist or a politician. She was just a guard, a woman who had grown up on a farm and joined the defense forces because it seemed like the right thing to do. But she understood the question, and she knew the answer. Because you threatened our home, she said simply. You threatened our families, our children, our future. When you do that to humans, something changes inside us. We stop being afraid. We stop caring about ourselves. We only care about protecting what we love. Vorn shook his head. But you knew you might lose. You knew millions would die. Why would you fight against such odds? Because we have always fought against such odds. Nari smiled softly. Our ancestors survived ice ages with nothing but animal skins and stone tools. They crossed oceans in wooden ships. They built cities in deserts and carved farms out of frozen ground. They faced diseases that killed half of everyone they knew, and they kept going. Compared to what our ancestors survived, your fleet was just another problem to solve. She picked up the empty tray from his previous meal. You thought our history of violence made us weak. You thought we had spent so much time killing each other that we would fall apart when faced with a real enemy. You were wrong. Our history made us strong. It taught us how to fight, how to sacrifice, how to survive when survival seemed impossible. Vorn stared at her with his black eyes. And a smile, he said. When your admiral first saw our fleet, he smiled. Why? Nari laughed softly. It was not a mocking laugh, but something warmer. Something almost like pity. He smiled because he knew something you did not. He knew who you were threatening. He knew our history, our strength, our refusal to give up no matter how bad things get. When you issued your threat, you thought you were speaking to victims. You thought you were speaking to prey. She opened the cell door and stepped through. You were speaking to humanity. We are not victims. We are not prey. We are the species that death itself has not been able to kill. The door closed behind her, and Vorn was left alone with his thoughts. Through the window, he watched human children playing in the park. They were laughing, running, living their small lives without any awareness of how close they had come to extinction. And perhaps that was the most terrifying thing of all. They were not traumatized. They were not broken by the near destruction of their world. They had simply moved on, like they had done 1,000 times before, like they would do 1,000 times again. The sun set over the prison, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Vorn sat in his cell and finally understood the smile. Admiral Pak Taiho had smiled because he knew humanity would win. Not from arrogance or foolishness, but from the deep knowledge of what his species was capable of. He had seen the threats, calculated the odds, and found them acceptable. He had looked at an invasion fleet that could destroy worlds and seen just another obstacle in humanity's path. The Kellen had come to Earth, expecting to find a civilization that would break under pressure. Instead, they found a species that had been breaking and rebuilding itself since before it came down from the trees. A species that treated apocalypse as an inconvenience. A species that smiled at death and kept fighting anyway. In the years that followed, humanity spread across the galaxy. Not as conquerors, but as liberators. The worlds that had suffered under Kellen rule welcomed them as heroes. New alliances formed. New civilizations emerged from the ashes of the Dominion. And everywhere they went, the humans carried with them the lesson of Earth. When faced with impossible odds, do not surrender. Do not despair. Do not give up hope. Smile instead. And then get to work. Because humanity had learned a truth that the rest of the galaxy was only beginning to understand. The universe is vast and cold and full of things that want to kill you. But as long as there are humans, as long as there is even one stubborn, angry, hopeful human left alive, there will be someone willing to fight for tomorrow. That is what it means to be human. That is why Pak Taiho smiled. And that is why, across the stars, the other species of the galaxy learned to fear and respect a single word. Human. It meant those who do not yield. And they never did.